So, welcome to this special edition episode of Gregorian Chat.
Yeah, we're in a car.
Going for a drive.
Yeah, Gregorian Chat on the road.
We need a name. Gregorian Drive? Nah.
Gregorian Mobile. The Chatmobile.
The title of this podcast is
Chatman.
Being Catholic in a Non-Catholic World.
That's exactly what it is. We were going to call it Being Catholic Outside the Chaplaincy, but we thought it was less descriptive. For those of you who don't know me and Don very well, we were both Catholic chaplains together for 1 year, but I've been a Catholic chaplain.
Man, it was such a good year though.
Oh, it was the best year. You know, everyone used to say my first year was the golden year, and it wasn't. That was maybe the bronze year. This was the golden year. When the Gregorian Chat was
certainly a golden
formulated.
year for me. It was the only year I was there.
Well, therefore it was also the bronze year, by default.
And the year of the boar? No, that's this year.
Is it?
Yep, the year of the pig.
Oh, I was even like the really boring person.
Not quite.
Anyway, so we're going to be talking about being Catholic in a non-Catholic context.
Why are we talking about that, Dom?
Because we're both in non-Catholic context right now, and I think lots of the people that listen to us are also in that.
Yes.
And I think it's very easy to be Catholic when you are inside of a church praying.
Word.
When you're at your rosary group or whatever you do. But how do we carry that into the secularum, if we're going to use the official word? Oh yeah, look at me.
Secularum.
Big words. Because that's what we're called to do. We're called to be Catholic, not to
have Catholic.
or sometimes be a Catholic. It's like
not to know Catholic.
Not to what?
Just.
Not to just merely.
Not to just know how to be a Catholic.
Yeah, or just like sometimes be Catholic, or like turn up to Catholicism. But
I agree.
To actually be a Catholic. So how do we do this?
Well, I guess the best person to ask would be you, because like you're pretty recently out of chaplaincy, right?
Okay.
And into study.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that shift been like for you? You've been a chaplain for 5 years now.
It's been pretty intense, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Please don't.
Yeah, because lying is a sin. That's why.
We can make it. No, we can't.
No, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. Sorry.
Gregorian crash. Anyway, yeah. So, what was I saying?
So you've left chaplain.
Yeah.
Left
So
being
it's
chaplain
been pretty
after 5
intense because
years.
I didn't just leave chaplaincy.
It left you.
I left fully. It left me. I left full-time work as a chaplain, which I've been doing for 6 years, and then I went into full-time study to become a nurse, which is something I haven't studied in years, and I haven't studied science in even longer. And then I became a father, and I became a building apprentice for like 2 months when we were fixing up the house which I bought.
I was going to say, wasn't that a while ago?
I also became
a
homeowner, moaning all the time. Anyway, life just changed for me. Like in 6 months, I went from knowing exactly what to do every day and how to do it, and it was all Catholic-based stuff. So every week I'd plan a Bible study. Every day at 11:30 I'd do adoration. Every day at 5 o'clock we'd do evening prayer.
Very structured.
Yeah, and it's like it's
routine.
Easy. It was easy to be Catholic, and I think that kind of sucks for people that. And very early on at chaplaincy, I felt guilty because it's like, where do I get off telling people to, how to pray and when they should be praying? Where do you get off?
When you should be what?
Well, I'm telling people like, hey, you guys should be praying every day. You should be doing this. It's like, well, they work a 9 to 5 where they don't have a chapel. So why do I get to tell them that?
Exactly.
So I felt really guilty. And one thing it did encourage me to is like, well, if they can't pray with me, I'll pray for them. So I think it put more of an onus on me to do the prayers that we had set.
Yeah.
So that because I know there's people that maybe want to pray but can't because they're super busy, and there's people that don't want to pray that can't, and they need the prayer the most.
And the thing is, man, like when I think back now just to that year of working as a chaplain, I'm like, man, it was like milk and honey.
Yeah.
We started at 9, we ended at 5. Sure, it wasn't always easy. Like sometimes there'd be students coming in to be like, hey, I'm really struggling with X, or I'm trying to kill myself, or
I can't eat eggs either.
Not struggling with my ex, struggling whatever. I'm struggling with why.
Yeah.
X or what? Why do I exist?
Big existential crisis. Existential crisis.
Anyway, let's take this T2 lane.
T2.
Boom! So, no, we're not going to make it. Dang it. So, but it's like milk and honey. I was like, you know, and I felt bad now. Like the number of times where, I mean, I have to take my hat off to you, Dom. You were really good at being like, hey, it's 3 o'clock, it's time for the Divine Mercy. And I'm like, well, if you're doing it, just pray for me because I'm not going to do it. No, you know, it's when you're working, it's easy to get caught up.
So easy.
Just being like, oh, I'm halfway through doing this poster, or you know, it's going to take 10 minutes of my time.
Whole 10 minutes.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh. At school, I'm a teacher, secondary teacher. At school, we have a prayer bell at noon for the Angelus. But it's really funny because it's a tradition at the school that nobody knows what it's for. So I taught my year 13s the Angelus to say during that prayer bell, because normally what they do is the bell goes, the students just, you know, are told to shut up for 3 minutes basically. And someone had told me, during that time, make sure your kids are, you know, just silent, reflective, you know, they don't have to be praying. And I was like, but I get them to pray the Angelus. And they're like, you know, and it's not hard. Like, they learnt it real quick, and they would take ownership of it and that kind of thing. So, but it was at those moments where I realized, man, like, no one's going to do this for me.
Right.
And, you know, the only way to really build positive culture, especially as a teacher, I'm supposed to be like an example for younger people. And for me, I've always found that I've always struggled with like keeping consistency in a routine.
Right.
If there's no one else there to do it for me.
Yeah.
So I look back on the time we had in chaplaincy when it was like, there's so many opportunities to pray, and I'm like, I wish I had made the most of those opportunities, pretty much.
Well, yeah, but I think you touched on something that's really actually quite helpful, is like these prayers that we have in the Catholic Church, which are really structured. So it's like the Angelus, there's a set time, there's a set thing to say, and I think because when we're busy, like studying or working or whatever, it's like, oh, I've got to pray, but you're so frantic when you study, when you're doing your work, that by the time you come to pray, you're not going to sit down and pray because you're just so you can just
like,
stop.
God, help me to process all of these thoughts right now.
Right, and so you're like, you need a calming down process. You don't have time for that, so it's like, okay. If I say my rosary before bed, I've said my prayers. If I say the Angelus at 12, I've done something faithful. Yeah. And whereas it might not feel that's changed you, it's actually benefiting you like heaps. There's a testimony from a woman called Gloria Polo. No, not Gloria Polo. That's something else. Anyway, so from Gloria Polo. And she said that
Marco's wife. Yeah.
She had a near-death experience, and she went to heaven, and she went to purgatory, and she saw all these things. And one of the things that she teaches, and now this is private revelation, so...
Wait a minute, sorry, just to clarify.
Yeah?
She had a near-death experience.
Yeah, so
she went to
alive.
Heaven.
Yeah.
So she died, you mean? She had a death experience, not a near-death experience.
I guess so.
She had a death experience.
She had a death experience. I think that it's classified as near-death experience because she's still alive.
But then that validates, you know, that devalues her experience. You didn't really die. Anyway,
she had a death experience.
So what were you saying?
And she said that she found out, you'll have to look her up on YouTube, the testimonies there is fantastic. She found out that like every time you say God bless to somebody, that's kind of like a currency for when they get to heaven. Every time you say God bless to someone, you're wishing a blessing upon them, which they can redeem later in life. Well, later in
like
in
tokens.
Death. Yeah, kind of like tokens. So it goes into like an account that they have, and then, you know...
Sounds like a good place.
St. Peter's like... Yeah, it does. St. Peter's like, oh, you got this many blessings. These people bless you this many times. So... The reason I bring this up is not to go too far into this whole idea of having a bank account with blessings, but more to point out that like prayer actually has an effect, and it might not physically or like emotionally have an effect, but like spiritually, metaphysically it does. And so when we do our like Angelus or Divine Mercy or like Mangelus.
This is the more manly version.
Yeah, we should start that. Anyway, when we do that, it actually has an effect. And I think that's why I love the structured prayers, because it's like, I don't need to think right now because I can't think, and so I can just say these words. And like, whereas it's like you get through the rosary and it's like, did I do 2 decades already? You know, it's like, yeah, you did. And it's...
Oh man, and there've been so many times where we're so I guess to tie it into my experience now of being like day to day.
Yeah.
Laura and I have had to become a lot better at saying, okay, we're going to do a rosary on the way to work. You know. But the thing is, like, of course, we feel more fulfilled when we can finish a full rosary on the way to work.
Yeah.
The only way that we can finish a full rosary on the way to work is if the traffic is really bad. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, if it's a bad day for traffic, it's a great day for the rosary. But I found myself wondering because, you know, of course at times I'm like, oh man, if we just quickly go through this decade, we will have done a full decade. But then I'm like, well, but then I'm not really in the moment. Like, wouldn't a better way to say the Our Father, I think, who was it that said, I mean, might have been Therese of Lisieux, you know, she could spend a whole, like, hour just praying an Our Father and just really say it slowly and with feeling and with meaning. And so in a sense, I'm kind of like, I understand what you're saying with the structure and all that kind of stuff, but
well, no, true.
Again, like, how important is it that we focus and say, well, instead of rushing through these prayers and just like bomb, 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 of course it's good, even though if we don't know, even if we're not aware consciously of every single word all the time. You know, like, actually taking our time to just
a couple of things come to mind with that is, like, first off, like, I think, I can't remember who said it, but, like, prayer is always perfect, but it can always be more perfect. And so, like, you know, the fact that you pray, perfect. But then Saint Dominic, someone described how he prays. It said it's almost as though he tastes the words as they come out of his mouth.
Well,
and like that,
a lot.
That really, really helps me when I'm praying, like the rosary or something. Is just thinking about how the words are forming out my mouth, and you really do feel like you're tasting them. But again, this is getting to a point where it's like, okay, I have 2 hours. Let's do a scriptural rosary, and I can really focus on it. But in real life, we don't have that sort of time. So I guess what we're saying is, like, try and find the time, but like,
do we not make that kind of time?
How do we? But how in a frantic world? Because I'm going to be going into a job where I do shift work. So, like, when I'm not sleeping, I'm working. You know, kind of, especially when I'm doing night shifts or something. So how? And
you'll be like looking at people's bums and all kinds of things.
Yeah, literally.
You'll be seeing every part of the human body.
And I think also something else that's helped me is realizing that prayer, the structure of prayer helps me when I feel like when I want to do a prayer and I can't think of what to do, like to pray freely. That helps with that, but also realizing that prayer isn't something that only happens in a chapel. It's not something that only happens at Mass or only in a rosary. And so, like,
said Jose Maria Escriva.
Yeah, Jose Maria Escriva. He's probably got a heap of quotes on this. I don't know any off the top of my head.
Pretty sure it's pronounced Jose Maria Escrivas.
Oh yeah, because he's Dutch. Anyway.
Because he like me.
Because he like you. Anyway,
but definitely what you're saying.
So your actions can be a prayer. The way, like, again, Saint Teresa of Lisieux is really good at this. There was this story where there's this nun that she really didn't get on with, and so she would spend more time with that nun and love that nun more, and that would be her prayer. And this sister of hers, felt that they were best friends until they read a diary afterwards. It's like, wow, you really struggle with me? That sucks.
I hated her guts.
Yeah. Well, she didn't say that.
We used to burn each other's hair. Not that they...
Yeah, just shut up.
Do you reckon nuns do that? Like, give each other plaits and things underneath their habits?
I don't know.
Anyway. I don't understand why there is currently a red arrow for no turning left. Well, it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, so this idea of praying in our work, and from having been in a workplace that is a Catholic school, it's really interesting. Because I guess what I'd be keen to start segueing into is talking about, like, how do we live our faith, and I guess it's important to think, like, in a modern era where so often people have used that quote from St. Francis, which doesn't really seem to exist, preach the gospel at all times and if necessary use words. Yeah. I feel like people are like, thank God. Yeah. Because I don't like preaching the gospel. And I've always taken it's been a bit of a pet peeve of mine that people are like, hey, don't worry about it. It actually says it's better to not say anything, which of course it's true, to live the gospel. But in the other sense, I'm like, there is actually a really important, like, we need to talk about faith and we need to talk about our life as Catholics. One of the staff at my school this week, he's actually Anglican but was baptized Catholic and grew up Catholic and actually started going along to the Catholic Church himself.
Right, yeah.
Even though his parents were, like, alcoholics and stuff like that.
Oh,
so pretty amazing story.
That's
anyway, became a bit disillusioned with the Catholic Church in his teenage years, and decided that he would, just kind of like, he's a Christian now, but he's not Catholic, and he kind of disagrees with a lot of like the symbols and all this kind of stuff. But he's trying to put his kids through the sacramental program so that they can go to a Catholic school. But the thing is, like, even though there are those differences there, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. The fact that you're just trying to get your kids into a Catholic school by saying you're Catholic, But at the same time, he's really good at preaching the gospel, and he's like unashamedly talks about Christ at the staff meetings. And there've been times where I've been really caught out thinking, oh man, that's kind of awkward. I'm like, why? Why is it awkward to talk about Christ and your relationship with Christ in a Catholic staff room?
Yeah. And I think and that's something I've come to know, like on my course, studying, doing nursing. I'm surrounded by a lot of people that aren't necessarily Catholic or even Christian, and one thing that's been really easy is say, hey, do you want to come to the Catholic chaplaincy with me? And then it's like, oh, is he a Catholic? And then having the Catholic chaplaincy being such a nice place where you can just drink tea, have a nap, or whatever.
Throw a frisbee.
You throw a frisbee. People. Yeah. It makes it so much easier. And it's like, okay, so I need to live this, like, not cool life, but just like really need to just love people intensely. And then they find out that I'm a Catholic afterwards.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I think people also sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's finished, yeah.
I think people respect you more when you actually have confidence in what you do. Like, I remember high school, I was like, oh yeah, I'm Catholic, but I don't really believe that stuff. Thinking that by saying that, they're like, oh yeah, he's Catholic, but he's also cool.
Yeah.
But I found that they actually respect you less. In the same way that now if somebody was to tell me, like, oh, I'm Hindu, but I don't practice it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
kind of
I respect you less for that, even though it's a different religion. Like, I would respect you more if you were like, I am this thing because I'm choosing to be it, not because my mum's making me do it. And, I actually really think it's great, and you just have an enthusiasm for what you're doing. Like, don't be down people's throats, of course, about like all the time, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. But I think people will respect your faith more if you own it.
Yeah, and there's no need to be showy about it, but just to be unashamedly it. And so, like, because it's led me into lots of really cool conversations with a few of my peers of, like, there's this one girl, she's not a Catholic, and she started asking me heaps of questions about Catholicism. And I was able to answer. And I think that's our prayers, like, watching Father Mike Schmidt's videos and remembering what he says, reading the Bible and knowing what it says in a Catholic context, and
finding catechism and things like that.
Yeah, and just doing it casually for a long time, you end up learning a lot.
Yeah.
And therefore, because this girl was saying to me, it's like she didn't think that Catholics believed that Jesus rose again and that he was their savior.
Yeah.
Based off other Catholics that she spoke to. Yeah. Because they didn't know. And it's like, okay, we need to know those things and we need to know why. But just for us. Not in order to teach, but so that when we can teach, when someone does ask, we can teach.
Also, and if people are like, oh, I hate the Catholic Church, I don't agree with it, a really good question to ask is, what do you know about the Catholic Church? That'd be the first question, because then they can tell you what they think is the Catholic Church, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, it's, what I hate is that you worship Mary, or what I hate is that you have a policy of sexual child abuse, whatever. It's like, wow, man, if that's your view of Catholicism, then I hate it too. That is not.
I actually had a very similar. I had experience of this before I was Catholic. I went in my first university, first of 3. I met a girl and she was Catholic. She said, "I'm Catholic." I was like, "Oh, that's a bit dodgy." And she was like, "Why?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then I realised I was in completely
Da Vinci Code.
Well, this was before the Da Vinci Code, and it was like the reason was as I was brought up in an Anglican school, and their RE history classes are so that evil Catholic Church, right, tried to stop our king, who then killed a whole bunch of women so that he didn't have to divorce them. Evil Catholics, right?
Pause.
There we go. Hopefully this is still filming.
Hopefully it's still filming. Let's just see how we go.
Yeah, this is the first time we've done it in a car, guys. I mean the podcast. Anyway, so yeah.
Both time. Anyway. Yeah.
So
yeah. Make sure that you clarify what do people think the Catholic Church is.
Yeah, you don't need to be like offensive about it. It's like, what do you mean? It's like so why do you think that? And it's like, right. Oh, I don't actually know. I think the camera's just stopped. Maybe it ran out of battery. Let's try it. I just try to turn it off and turn it back on, and then I don't know what's going to happen. No, I think it's dead. Okay, the rest of this is just going to be audio.
All right, well, audio it is.
Yeah, so I think, daring to talk about our faith, daring to live our faith, and then daring to... Yeah, battery's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it back to the question. How do you be Catholic outside of, a Catholic context? I guess the answer is, you be a Catholic. And what does that mean? It means...
go to church on Sundays.
Go to church more on Sunday if you can.
Yeah, at least.
If you can't, pray. If you don't know what to pray, we have a whole bunch of set prayers.
Yeah.
But also look into your faith. So when you have the time, read about the faith. Watch Father Mike Schmidt's videos. Listen to our podcast and other podcasts.
Think about questions which are really, really difficult. One of my colleagues recently asked me, "So, bro, he's Baha'i." Baha'i faith.
See you later.
And it was one of the first times, that when I've actually been challenged to really think about and explain something that we do. And I had to ask this question at Encounter the other night to Father Chris to explain it, because he said to me, "Hey, I know that you I know there's a lot of symbolism in the Old Testament and whatever for Eucharist, in itself, but the exact idea of eating a person, where is that? Where did you get that from? Why would you eat the person Jesus, And so I was like, I really need to find that out. So if there's something that you still don't think you could give an elevator pitch on very well.
But I think also,
find out.
It's a good example because, he knew you were a Catholic, so he knew he'd ask you.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, we have to wear our Catholicism daily. And then, again, that doesn't need to mean, right, get as many medallions, stick them to my jacket, and then put a massive crucifix on my forehead. But, live a Catholic life and people will notice you're Catholic.
Yeah.
And then when they find out you're Catholic, they'll know that they can ask you questions. And when the thing is also, being okay with talking about your faith makes you so much more prepared to talk about your faith.
Yeah.
Because A, practice makes perfect, and B, they'll ask you questions that you haven't asked yourself because you take it for granted.
Yeah.
And it's crap, I don't know the answer to that. So.
But at least say, that's a really interesting question. I would love to look it up and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and then look it up and then get back to them. It's hey, you asked me this question a couple of weeks back, and I've been researching it, and I found this is what the church teaches.
Engage with it instead of putting it to the side because you're afraid to,
Yeah. So I guess the answer is live our faith, and the way to do that is by praying, is by researching, casually. You're not going to have any tests, and by living, going to mass.
Yeah.
In your lunch hour, it's where are you going at lunch? Oh, I go to mass. Do you want to come with? Mm-hmm. That's one thing I used to do. I used to say, hey, I'm going to mass. Do you want to come with? It's oh, I'm not Catholic. I didn't ask if you were Catholic. I said, do you want to come to mass? Brought so many people to church with me, and then they get to experience Catholicism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this is just what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And remember the old quote: "They will know we are Christians by our love." Whether that's you talking to an atheist or another Christian, because a lot of people think Catholics aren't Christians.
Yeah.
It's well, try me. So, really, it's, love everyone. And I don't mean that in a sappy, tolerate everyone, don't pull up anyone on anything. Just be a good person.
And have and I suppose it is having that stance of when something's wrong, saying, no, I don't agree with that. And being okay with it. I mean, it'll be a little bit painful, but it can also be really a real blessing. It's I don't agree with that, and they go, actually, yeah, it's probably wrong. And it's oh wow, oh my gosh.
So thanks for listening. I think we need to get a new camera.
Yeah.
One that can film for more than 20 minutes.
So if anyone knows what that camera is, can you tell us what it is so that we can buy it?
buy it for us?
Or you can just buy it for us. So stay tuned for more Gregorian chats and maybe even some Catholic Life podcasts coming up.
Yes,
I haven't had time because I've had exams, but I filmed one and I think I accidentally deleted it earlier. So
well, my hopes are down.
No, I'll do it again. Anyway, stay tuned. God bless.
God bless.
Kakite.